Hello everyone and welcome to today's live class talking about the Niagara system in Unreal Engine 5. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay and see me okay and everything's working no problem. So I want to go through first of all what we're going to be doing today and what you can expect going forward. So let's just jump straight into Unreal over here. So in today's class today we're going to be looking at by the end of today's session, you'll be able to understand how emitters and systems work together to create different effects, create dynamic particle effects using varying input methods, which we'll go over, don't worry, to calculate different values you may want to do, and also how to create materials that are going to take advantage of different particle system effects and inputs from particles, so you can create even more crazy dynamic materials and particle systems for really cool different stylized effects afterwards. So let's go through and talk about actually what this actually means. By the end of this, I want to actually well first of all, let's go through what my aim is. My aim is not to just show you click here to make a cool particle system. I want you to walk away today with some knowledge and understanding of how the particle system works, so you can experiment and play with it to make your own particle effects, and hopefully gives you a leg up understanding of where to begin when coming up with some ideas for particles. So that is what we're going to be doing today. So don't worry if you don't want to, if you can't follow along, that's fine. We'll be doing that. It's all been archived. Patreon members get access to this archive straight after the stream. Everyone else will get it 2 weeks later. And first of all, before I get started, I want to say a massive thank you to all my Patreon members and everyone supporting me over here on YouTube. If you're not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help out the channel a lot. So hello everyone in chat, hopefully you're going. If you do have any questions about what I'm going through or want me to explain something a bit better, please put your question into chat and I'll try and explain it better for you, okay? But let's get started. So, the Niagara system. To create a Niagara system effect, you have to first of all create the Niagara system itself. Now, when you do create your first one, it's going to ask you about what kind of template you want to start with. You've got some pre-built ones that Unreal have given you. You can copy existing ones you've already made, or you can create a brand new one. Okay, so we're going to create an empty one here so we can see it completely from scratch, so you understand it a little bit better. So I'm going to click create empty system and finish that, and we'll call this one Ryan's VFX. Okay. Now, a Niagara system is basically the main thing that gets dropped into the world or attached to actors or anything like that. It is the thing that contains all the emitters, all the particles that it's going to fire out. And if we open it up, we can add in our... Oh, hello. There we go. If we open it up, we get this screen come up. Now, if you've never seen a Niagara system screen before, don't worry, I'll explain what you're seeing here. So the first thing you've got over here, right in the middle, is your overview of the system. This is where you're going to see details about the system itself and all the emitters that are contained within it. Now, emitters can also be made into separate objects, separate files. So that way you can take them from one system and put them into other systems too, which is really, really useful if you find yourself creating the same emitter over and over every single time. You just create it once and you can bring it into multiple systems later on. But over here, you've got a blue node. This is your system details. So you can hear where you put in your system details, your parameter details, properties, things like that. Over here on the left, you've got a preview. So this is going to be visually what we see and what we expect from our Niagara system. On the right-hand side is our details panel. So if I select a panel over here, we can see all the various different settings we have available to us based on whatever we currently got selected. Now these can get quite lengthy, and when we go into emitters, you'll see they kind of conjunct them all together. So yeah, Orion, gaming. So like a master material instance, yeah, kind of like a master material instance in regards to the emitters. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If you go in here, you can go into effects, and you can add a Niagara emitter here. And you can design your own custom Niagara emitter and bring it in here later. So let's go ahead down over here and add a new emitter. So right click, you can add an emitter. And it'll give you some templates. Now, if you've made one already inside your project, you'll find it here. Okay, you'll find templates, parent emitters, and behavior examples. So you might find parent emitters would be the ones that you've made. But you can show and hide whatever ones you want to see. But we're going to choose an empty emitter as a starting point. And this is an emitter. Emitters are orange, and they are the things that shoot out the particles. Okay, so if you think of particles as like water coming out of a hose, these are the hoses. Okay, these are the things that are going to flying it out. So over here, you've got various settings you can change over here. So this is what I mean about the settings on the right hand side looking a bit complicated. They're not that complicated when you understand that if you set the whole emitter, this shows every single property that you have for everything here. Okay, so don't fret, because you can just click on individual ones here and it'll just show you that section on its own. So see, properties, here's the main bit here, and here's the top bit up here. It's exactly the same. It's just all condensed into one thing. So don't worry about it too much. Emitters, yes, Rusty, you can add multiple emitters to this, and that's where you get more complex Niagara particle effects coming out of the system. We can add multiple emitters together to get different effects, and you can time them differently as well, which we'll go through and see examples of that in a minute. Now, in the emitter, you can tick them off and on, so when you're debugging it, you can turn them off and on and see how they look on their own, how they look with other things, and so on and so forth. You can also see down here, you can isolate it, so it makes it even easier if you want to say, I just want to look at this one emitter. You can click that button and it will turn them all off apart from this one. Okay, so you can turn it off and on with this little button here. Now, one thing to be aware of is in later versions of UE4 and earlier versions of Unreal 5, this screen looked slightly different. Okay, not massively different, but slightly different. All the same settings are there, but the main thing that's different is the event dispatchers. They're not in the same place they used to be. They used to be down here. These are now up here in the stages. Okay, you'll find them here. Okay, so don't worry about that. They're up here. They are still there. Okay, so let's take a look at how we actually create a particle system. So in the emitter over here, we've got a few things we've got to worry about. We've got emitter spawn and emitter updates. These are overall emitter settings. Okay, so emitter update is probably the most important one, as this is going to determine when and how particles get filling out. Okay, I'm just going to adjust the audio volume in my head a bit, because this is a bit much for my head to understand. Scale it up so you guys can still hear it. Okay, I feel like I'm shouting. So yeah, so emitter update, this is the way you put in where the particle is going to spawn, and there's typically two main methods of doing this. You've got a spawn rate and a spawn burst. A spawn rate is how many you want to spawn per second. So if I click on the emitter update and click the plus button, you'll see up top they've been shortlisted as suggested options. You've got spawn rate, and as I said, this is how many per second. So if I put in 5, it's going to do 5 particles per second. Put in 5,000, 5,000 per second. Okay. Now, as you can see, they're spawning over here, and they're all being spawned on the exact same spot. That's why it will just look like one particle. We haven't told them where to spawn, anything like that. We're just going to leave it like this for now. Next one is spawn burst, but more on that later on. We'll go through that one on its own. Next up, we've got particle spawn and particle update. Particle spawn, these are the settings or modules, which is, that's what we call these individual things here. The initialized particle is a module. These modules in particle spawn determine the behaviors and properties of the particle at the moment of its creation. Particle update is how is the particle behaving throughout its lifespan. Oh, the camera's coming up. Yeah, I'll move it down here. There we go. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so initialized particle, yeah, as I say, is the where you want. Sorry, particle spawn modules are the ones that are going to fire as soon as the particle spawned. Particle update modules are the ones going to go throughout its lifespan. And then finally, we've got the render section. Render is basically how is it going to look. Okay, so this is the materials, meshes, ribbons. These are the things that we're going to go through as well to determine how we're going to look this thing. So if I click on here, sprite render as the default one you get, and it is basically a material that you apply onto it. You'll see it's just using a default sprite material, which we'll stick with for now, but we will be changing this later on. So let's go ahead and make this thing spawn in a different location. Let's say I've got this thing, I want it to explode out. Okay, so it's like a fountain. So first what I need to do is add velocity to each particle as it is spawned. So if I go to particle spawn here and search for add velocity, which is up here at the top, and we can click on this. Tempo, if you're not seeing this glowing orb, by the way, just go to spawn rate and make sure you've got a number on here. Set it to 5 like I have. You'll be alright. So here I've added velocity to my particle spawn. Now particle spawn The add velocity, sorry, it's going to give us this little error, and it comes up here. This module has unmet dependencies. That means that this module requires other modules to run. But don't worry, because what it does, it actually gives you the list of all the different modules that it needs or could possibly need to actually run. Now here we've got two options. We've got solve forces and velocity, or apply initial forces. We want to use the solve forces and velocity. So you can click on this, and as you can see here, the following post dependency is not met, solve forces and velocity, which means you need that one. So you just click fix issue, and you'll see it automatically adds it for you in the particle update. Okay, so on the add velocity, we've got settings on our module over here determining where it should be going. So the default it's going to give you is 50 in the Z, so it's going to go flying up by 50 units per second, which is quite slow, but you can see it working there. Okay, it's worth noting the camera controls in this scene are the same as they are in like Mail or like other 3D software like Blender probably. So you can left click to pan your camera around. You can use the middle mouse button to pan. So this is rotate, pan, and zoom with right mouse button. So you can move around scene like this. Yeah, so we can add velocity to this, and what's really good about this is that we can got 3 different directions. So if I want to make it go a little bit to the left, a bit to the right, I put in a value there to make that go that way as well. So now we have sort of diagonal movement on our Niagara particles. Now, if I wanted to make this a bit more random, so they're not all going in the same direction, I want it to be like a spray coming out of it. We got these little options over here. Now, these little options over here are the different input methods we have available to us. These are the things that we can plug in to get different values out of this. So, for example, if we were to do a random, you're seeing here we've got a few options. We've got random range vector, or select vector from array. So, the difference between a random range vector and random vector is that random vector is just going to give you a random vector which is between 0 and 1 in length. You would then need to scale that up based upon how fast you want it to go. So for example, if I clicked on random vector here and then go to vector scale, it says 1, I change it to say 200. You'll see it now go in all different directions like so. Okay. So it's multiply that vector, that 0 to 1 vector, by 200. So now we've got random speed going for every single one. Some will go faster than others. Some will go different directions than others. It's completely random for us. Okay. Now, what we can also do further to this is we can also randomize the vector scale if we want you to, because that is 200. But you see, you've got a little down arrow on here. We can also add input methods to this too. And we can keep doing this over and over and over again for every single input. So, for example, I can do this as random if I wanted to. And do random range float. And that's going to give it a minimum and maximum. So let's do a minimum of 50 and a maximum of 200. So some will go faster, some will go slower, some will completely go all over the place. And you see like different speeds going on here. Some slow, some fast. Yeah, all doing those sort of beautiful little things there. Okay. And I can increase the spawn rate if I want to see more of them. Let's say 100. Well, let's do 1,000. Now, Niagara is really, really good at displaying loads and loads of particles. So don't be worried about going to higher numbers or anything like that. I guarantee you'll be okay. Okay. So, by all means, start big and then you can always bring it back down if you need to later on. Okay. Let's bring this down back to 5 so we can see it a bit clearer. Okay, so let's go through about, okay, rather than spawning from a single location, how do we make them do something a bit more interesting? Let's make them spawn in a different location each time. So let's go to particle spawn again, and we're going to do location. And you can see the option for shape location. You click on this. Now in older versions, this is not called shape location. There are different modules per each shape. In the latest version of Unreal 5, these are now combined into one module where you can choose which shape you want. So over here, the default one is going to be sphere. And it says the sphere radius is 100. So if I actually might be actually easier for me to show this if I turn off velocity. Turn that off. So you'll see they're now spawning within a sphere. Now I can change that sphere's radius from 100 here to 200 if I want me to. And they're now going to spawn randomly in a, imagine like a sphere here. And you can see it's a lot clearer. If our spawn rate goes up to like 1,000 again, you'll see that sphere shape take place a lot quicker. Yeah. Put it down, back down to 5. So we've got them randomly spawning over there. Okay, so we've got different shapes. Now, different shape locations, though, we've got different things over here. Sphere radius. Again, you've got randomized options for this if you want, or you not randomized, you can do anything you like in here. There's loads of stuff we can do in here. We'll go through, don't we, in a moment. I've also got sphere distribution. Now, at the moment, it's completely random. But if I want, I can give it direct or uniform placement. So if I go to uniform, for example, I can give it uniform distribution of 1, 1, which is basically the same spot every one of them. But let's say we put in 0.5 and 0.5 here. Nope, I misremembered that one. Hang on, let's go through that. Along the sphere, 1 is a full sphere, 0.5 is hemisphere. Use non-uniform scale to invert the hemisphere if desired. Yeah, you should be that. Oh, it's because they're all going to spawn on the same place. Then no, it's going to help. Let's just do random. There you go. Yeah, because they were all random. Now I'll put them all to one place. That's why. But anyway, more on that in a minute. If I go to hemisphere distribution here, I can turn that off and on. So X, I can do 0.5 there. Again, be easy if I turn this up to 1,000. You can see it's a lot clearer. Okay, so you get half circle. Right, so you want to do sphere shapes, you can do that. So let's say you were doing like a puddle burst or whatever like that. You can change X here to 1 and Y to 0.5. You get this going on. And you can do add velocity back on. It will spell like this, okay? Now at the moment, they're going out in all directions. So let's actually change that to make them only go up. So I'm going to go to my add velocity here. And I'll change this velocity here from random vector to random range. And I'm going to put in, leave 0, 0, 0 as the minimum. Maximum, we're going to do 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. But the velocity speed scale, put in 200 here. And, oh, sorry, no, X and Y need to be -1, sorry. In the minimum. There we go. And you get different reactions coming out like in a sort of semicircle here. Let me turn this down so you can see it a bit clearer. Okay. But you've got loads of little things you can tweak and mess about with to get the way you want it to go. But let's make this even a bit nicer. I'm going to change this the velocity here to be let's do minus 0.2 minus 0.2 0.2 and I'm going to turn off shape location. Yeah. And like so. Now you're going to get them like in a fountain coming. Okay, they come up like so. I can increase that up to 1,000 if I wanted to, but make them faster. Okay. So let's turn this down a bit. Let's go to like 200. Yes. Okay, so let's mess about with a bit more about the actual particles themselves and see what we can do with this. So if I go to initialize particle, this is one that's built in the emitter straight away. We've got a few options here that are key to making our particles the way we want them to make. So first off, we've got lifetime. This is how long a particle is going to exist once it's been spawned. 5 seconds is the default. Now, I do recommend you do mess about with this as it is a bit too long in my opinion. So I'm going to change this to be a more randomized value. So I'm going to random range in float. And I'm going to go between 1 and 3. So now you'll see some of them will drop off a little bit sooner than others. Okay. And we can go down further and mess about with sprite size as well. We can change that from unset. We can change that to uniform or random uniform, non-uniform. Uniform basically means they're going to stay like square, but non-uniform could be randomized, it could be stretched. Okay, so if I go to random uniform and choose a minimum of, say, you see they're quite small now, so let's change that to 30 and 60. Okay, now they're going to come out in different sizes, some small, some big. Okay, you can also do a thing with rotation as well. So if you have got like an image you want to use instead, you can mess about with rotation there too. Obviously we've got a circle, so it's the same regardless of which rotation you do. It doesn't really matter. Got mesh ribbons down here too, which we'll go through in a bit, so don't worry about that for now. You can also change the offset position too, so you can mess about with this if you've got multiple emitters, which we'll go through again later too. Okay, so let's take a look a bit more about what we can do with particle update. So particle update is going to change the state of the particle over the course of its lifetime. So let's change its color. Let's go to particle update, click on this, and you'll see scale color as one of the top options. And click on this. And right now, over here, scale RGB and scale alpha are ticked on, but they're just kept as 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, which are pretty boring. So I'm going to go to my scale RGB here. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to do curve. Let's do curve, and do vector from curve. Okay. And actually, no. We'll do. Let's undo that. Let's change this from. I would much rather change this from RGB and alpha separately to just RGB and A together, and then click on this and do color, linear color from curve, and you click on this, and you can do color from curve. Okay, makes it a bit easier for you to do this. You can also just type in color here on its own, so without scale color you can do color on its own, it'll be the same value. But let's just take out scale color so you can see that a bit clearer. So just color on its own, you'll get you this thing here. If you change that to color from curve, you can then change where you want the color to be over time. So Lottie, the stream will stay public, will become public after 2 weeks. Until then, Patreon members will get access to it straight away. So over here, you can really see them fading out, by the way, because the alpha is really fading out. So this line, this gradient chart, on the left hand side is when it's just been spawned, and on the right is when it's died. Okay, so that's at least the default setting for this. So let's change its color. Let's go from over here to say red or orangey sort of color, and we're going to go over to this one over here and make this more yellow. Okay, and if you've used anything like Photoshop before, you'll see that this is very familiar. You can drag these about to change their weighting. You can add other points in there by just clicking in the middle to add different offsets to it. Okay, so you can really mess about with things like this. So we've got the alpha bottom at the bottom here. You can just drag the alpha here, so they're not as see-through all the way out. Okay. Now another thing you can do is you can scale them so they are glowing. So if you want your things to glow, you go to particle update and do scale color, and we're going to no, not scale color, we'll turn it off. Over here we want to scale this. No, there it is down there. So you see scale color down here. If I expand open the advanced options, scale color 111. If I put in a higher value, let's say if I make that 2, it's going to increase the brightness of the starting point. So if I do 2 there, you'll see them now are glowing. Yeah, so you want to do light emitting type particles, you can do so. But that's 10, 10, 10. Get some cool glowing effect. Okay. Yes, you can do it from distance over time. So if you want to do curve index over here, normalized age, just click on this and it'll give you different things you can do. Now this is a property that you can just tie to, so you can probably get distance from here too. If I do distance here, and hang on, my scale of this thing's a bit knackered, hang on. Distance traveled, so you can't see it off the screen, but there's one that says particles distance traveled, so you can get stuff like that, but I don't know what value it's going to come out as. You want it normalized, I guess. That's the main thing, you want it normalized because it's going between 0 and 1, so you need it to be normalized around. Normalized distant fraction. Yeah, I'm sure you can mess about with it and you can see what the things you get. Most common thing people do is like for age. Yeah, so there you go. You can do things like this, and we can. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mess about with the another particle update over here. We're gonna go and add gravity to it. So particles have also have gravity and different forces applied to them. We want to add gravity here. You can see now falling. Now we have got them shooting up as well, so we want them to go up a little bit, then back down. So gravity here is set to by default to -980, which is a bit high for us, as you can see, which is dripping. This, which looks good for like lava, I guess, if you want to do that. But we're going to turn that gravity down a bit. So let's do -400 maybe. -200. No, we don't go too crazy with it because we don't want it to be like floaty. We do want them to drop down pretty rapidly still. So if I go back down to my velocity, I'm just going to increase that then to 600. Okay, maybe let's turn it to 400. Yeah, there we go. So we've got this thing that's sort of spewing out sort of these flame member type things going up. Okay. Let's increase the spawn rate. Let's go to 100. Yeah, not looking too bad. Okay, so we can do some pretty interesting things with this. Okay. Now, when you are making emitters and systems, there's lots of little jargon going around about spaces and coordinate spaces you're doing things in. So coordinate spaces are different ways of measuring where coordinates are. You have things called emitter space. You have the system space, or local space, which is also called, and you have sort of world space. You have all these different spaces to be aware of and keep track of. And you will be familiar with these if you're doing things with like animation and things like that. Very, very common to talk about them there too. Same goes for here too. Okay, so be aware of different things that have related relationship to where they're spaced. So for example, our particle system here, if I was to drop this into the world as is, okay, and say I move it around, you can see the particles I've spawned previously are still where they were before. They haven't moved on. They are staying where they are. Okay, that's because the particles being spawned are being spawned in the world space. They're being spawned in the world space, coordinate space. So when you move it, they're not changing their location because the world hasn't moved. Their emitter has. But if I wanted to say the particle system to go with the movement of the thing, that's easy enough to do. All I have to go in to do is go into my emitter, go to emitter properties, and you'll see up here local space. Turn this on. It's saved. Now in here it'll look the same, it'll look totally normal. If I go back to my world now and move this around, you see it's moving around altogether. That's because our particles are using the space of the emitter, so all their coordinates are related to that emitter. Now, this is very useful for doing things like muzzle flashes off of guns, because you usually want the muzzle flash to continue moving with the character's gun, otherwise it looks a bit weird, they get left behind. So So do make sure you tick on local space for things that require it, especially if they're moving around. This works especially true for things like thrusters on ships and things like that, or smoke coming out of cigarettes and all this stuff. You can keep it all tied together to the actual system if you wish. Okay, so currently we've got this all looking fine, but let's go one step further in this, and let's make collisions possible in this thing. So we're going to go back to here, and let's say I want to make these things bounce off the environment. It's super simple to do. All you have to do is go into particle update, click the little plus, and add collision. That is it. Now, obviously, there are loads of different settings related to collision, how it bounces around and things like that. But for now, if you leave it as simple as that, you'll see them bounce off the environment. Yeah. Really cool, simple way to add collidable particles to your system. I'm going to decrease the size of my particles here. I'm going to go to initialize particle. I'm going to go down to my uniform sprite size. I'm going to divide this by a factor of, say, 10. So I'm going to do this between 3 and 6. So they're going to be tiny little things, okay? Yeah, like that. I'm going to go to my spawn rate and increase that as well by 10-fold. So I'm going to have 1,000 of them coming out. Now, each one of these you'll see is collidable. They are bouncing around our environment freely. And they'll also bounce off our character too. You can see a few bouncing off and pinging off our character. If you set a lifetime to 60 seconds, they'll keep bouncing. Yes. Yeah, they will keep bouncing. Yeah. Just be aware of how many particles you may have on screen at a single time, but yes. Good. Okay. You do some fun things there. But let's go one step a little bit further here. Let's say I want these drops here. As soon as they hit the floor, I want to cause another particle effect at the moment of their impact. How do we go about doing that? Well, we can use things called event handlers. So I'm going to go into my visual effects here, and we're going to add an event handler for when they collide with something. So to do that, I'm going to go to particle update, click the little plus icon, and type in collision. You'll see in here, generate collision event. When you do this, that's all you got to really do in here. You don't have to really do anything, but you will get an error. And it says it requires persistent IDs. This is important because it needs to know and keep track of individual particles. So easy enough to fix though. Just go to properties and you tick on requires persistent IDs. Now for this, I'm going to turn the spawn rate down to, let's say, I'm gonna do it back to 5 again, so it's easier for you guys to see. I'm actually going to change the size of these little things as well. You see the error marks, by the way. These disappear once you've turned that persistent ID on. Let's change that back up to 30 and 60. Okay. So when these collide, they're going to generate a collision event. I want another particle system to happen when these things collide. So I'm going to create another emitter, another empty one. This time I'm going to do a burst. Now a burst is very different from a spawn rate. Where the spawn rate is, say, generating 5 over a second, we would say 5 and it will spawn all 5 at once in a burst. So let's go ahead and look at that. We'll go into emitter update and do spawn burst instantaneous. Over here we've got spawn count, and we'll leave this alone for now. Okay, but if I were to put it in as like 5, for example, actually I'm going to turn off the other one so we can see what this looks like on its own. Spawn burst instantaneous. You get spawn time, so how long will they spawn in? But 5 would be fine. Again, and the same settings but apply. So I want to add velocity to this thing. I'm going to go there and fix the issue, and we're going to randomize the range here. And do -1, -1, 0, 1, 1, 1. Velocity speed here, we'll do 100. And let's do 400. I'm going to add gravity to this thing. Okay, and turn that down to minus 300. Okay, then I'm going to give them a much shorter lifespan. So I'm doing nothing that we haven't done already just now. Maybe 0.5. I'm also going to change their size, so they're not going to be round. So I'm going to go to sprite size down here and change it to non-uniform. And I'm going to go from X to 10. I'm going to change that down to 2. So 10 in 2, Y in 10. Oh wait, they're too thin now. Let's do 20 and 100. Right, so now you get this shape coming out. Okay. So let's say I want these things to like bend and rotate to match which way they're going. So to do that, you go down to sprite renderer, and down here you'll see facing mode. It says face camera. You can tell it to, no, not so, sorry, alignment. There you go, alignment. You want to change that to velocity aligned, and now you'll see that they are going to follow which direction they're going in. As they move, they like spark off and come in that weird sort of way. And just increase their lifespan a little bit, so go to 1. Okay, so you can see it a bit clearer now. Yeah. And we'll do a particle update on here as well, and do the color. And I'll leave it as white, but I'm going to just do color from curve, so we get their alpha coming in, so they fade away. Okay. So that's what an individual one's going to look like. However, I want to spawn this every single time one of my things collides with the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to, up here, sorry, to stage, and go to event handler. When I click on this, it's going to, over here, see source and some other settings here. So the source, I click on this, I should, I don't know if I turn this one on maybe. Okay. I should see my collision event come up. Okay, obviously you had to turn that on. But like for this, you want to turn off spawn burst instantaneous. So over here is you got a few options. So you can execution mode every particle or every spawn particles. We only want to do this for spawn particles. So click on spawn particles. Max events per frame. So imagine this one explosion is one event. How many events can you have per frame going on the screen? Okay, so we're going to change that to, well, we can change it to however many we're spawning here, which is 5. So I can change that to 5 if I wanted to. But I'm going to change it to 20. And spawn number is how many of these particles are we going to spawn in here. So this works differently from our spawn burst. Our spawn burst is an instant like this. This is the same sort of thing, but in a different location. Okay, so it's going to override whatever we do with the emitter update. The spawn number here we'll do 10, and leave it like that, and you'll see a few come up here, but that's fine. I don't mind that. Let's change the initialized particles size here. We'll do that to 5 and 20. Bit better. Yeah, cool. Okay, next thing I'm gonna do is I'll make it so that when the yellow particles hit the floor, they die as well. So I'm gonna go over to here. I'm gonna go to particle update. And I'm going to do kill particles. And kill particles, you have a tick box where you just tick it on, it'll just kill the particles dead, right? However, that kind of just defeats the point because they all just disappear. So we don't want to do that. So rather than ticking it on, you're going to click on the little down arrow here, and you're going to search for collision. And you'll see here, particles has collided. These are parameters that are being turned off and on and doing other things like vectors and so forth. So the particles based one are ones individual particle has, and they has collided on them. I'm going to click on this, and that means it'll kill the particle as soon as it collides with the floor. So they're not going to bounce around, but they'll spawn, well, they should spawn these little effects over here. So as you can see, they're spawning effects, but they're spawning in the wrong location. That's fine, we can fix that. So we're going to go into our explosion right over here, and we go to the... over here, sorry. So we've got our particle effect over here. On the event handler properties, click on this. Not event handler properties, sorry. Click on the little plus button there, and you'll do receive, if you can spell it right, receive collision event. There we are. And receive collision event is going to bring us a load of different information. And you can see here we're going to get its velocity, color, and also, more importantly, its location, its position. And you see it's being applied. That means that we're writing the position of the collision to the position of where we want to spawn these things. So if I hit save now and go to here, you'll see these little explosions happen every time one of these lands on the floor. Or land on me. Okay. So let's just review what we've done so far. Number 1, understand how emitters and systems work together to create effects. We can combine emitters to create systems, and we can also have emitters outside of systems that we can just bring in and put into different systems if we so wish. So if I want to use that same spark for different things, I totally can do. It's not a problem. Create dynamic particle effects using varying input methods to calculate values. We've gone through and shown that drop down values, you can choose random, you can choose hard-coded values, you can choose variables, so forth, all from that little drop down menu on the right hand side. So we've got left to do is create materials for particles and control them with varying effects. We'll do that in a minute. But before I do that, I want to go through one little thing with everyone of how to approach designing visual effects for your games, movies, TV shows, whatever it is you're making. This is an art form, and much like an art form, you'll find yourself, if you're drawing on paper, rubbing out all the time, or erasing, sorry, all the time, sketching different ideas down, trying different things out, blocking things out. Same goes for visual effects. None of this is going to come to you straight away. You will have to estimate with some values and see what they do, see how they respond to the world around you, and see what works best. So don't be afraid of experimenting with different values you have available to you. If you're unsure what the value does, use an extreme value to see the change it has. So if you wanted to know what velocity does, just change the velocity value up high and you can see what effect it has. Now there are lots of really cool modules you can try and mess about with. There's way too many for me to go through just in this one live session. But if you are interested in doing more live sessions in Niagara, please let me know and I'll do more live sessions in it. But I do have some other tutorials in Niagara that you're more than welcome to check out, where I'll go into a lot more detail in some of the other modules that you have available. But we'll go on to doing more of those in a moment. But first of all, I want to go through some different types of renderers you have. So for this, I'm going to make a whole new emitter for this. Let's turn this off and turn this off. Okay, so the first off I want to go through is I want to show you the ribbon emitter. So down here, rather than use a sprite renderer, I'll turn that off. I'll click on the plus, and I've got a few options here. I'm going to use a a ribbon renderer. Now, ribbon renderer is going to ask for a material. I'm just going to use the same one that's in the sprite renderer here. So what I'm going to do is click the little folder icon, browse to it, go to my ribbon renderer, and hit the little arrow icon to use it. What's that? Now, what the ribbon renderer does is it will take the particles that we're normally spawning, but then connect them all up with a line. Okay, so all the particles that spawn are connected. So, for example, if I was to go up to emitter update now and do spawn rate and change that to 5, then add a velocity to our particle spawn, add velocity, and solve the forces, you can see this line coming out of them. Yeah, it's a very thin line. Let me make that a bit bigger for you guys so you can see that. Actually, let me turn on the sprite renderer so you can see both. So here are the individual particles coming up, and in between all those is a line connecting them. A bit hard to see because there's so many of them all connected, but let's make that faster. Let's change it from 50 to, say, 400. And you can maybe see a little line connecting them all up. Now you can control the width of that line quite easily. Just go to initialize particle, and over here you'll see ribbon width, and it's set to unset. You can change it to direct set, and then change that to whatever you like here. So I'm going to do this to like 30. You see that ribbon line going between them all. So all the particles are connected together. If I turn off sprite renderer here, you'll see this line even clearer. But what happens if I do randomness? Now, it's something that people often forget is that particles are all connected in a ribbon renderer. So if I were to go to add velocity and change this to random, let's do random vector and do random vector scale of say 400, you get this sort of wispy effect. Which is pretty neat. Okay, so each particle is connected to each other in a sequence. Now that ribbon, remember, all these little down arrows here are different input methods. So it can be randomized, put a sine wave on them, all sorts of things. Let's put a sine wave on it. So I'm going to go to particle update, and I'm going to do ribbon, and do scale ribbon width. Click on this, and ribbon width scale is set to 1 currently. Obviously, if I change that to 5, it'll get a lot thicker. But let's do something a bit more crazy. Let's go for a sine wave. So if you search for sine, you got also cosine as well if you want. Do sine wave here. And if I change the period up here to say 3, you can see that sort of flashing in and out like this. Okay. Scale will do 2, make it a bit thicker, maybe 3. Okay, you can do some interesting things with the sine wave and cosine wave to do some crazy sort of designs if you so wish. And the normalized angle here could be also changed too. This is currently set to its age on the whole of emitter. If I were to go to age of the particle, actually let's change that to age of the particle normalized. Okay, you'll see parts of the ribbon get thin, some get thicker, thin, thicker, thin, thicker, thin, thicker. Yeah. Do particles also work with this? Yes, you just have to imagine in between all these are these sprites going on here. So if I put these sprites on, you can see the individual balls. Those are things that will collide and the ribbon will bounce around with them. So let's show you that in action actually. I'm going to turn off sprite renderer there, so I've just got ribbons going on. Go to particle update. I'm going to add gravity to this thing first. And we'll change that down to minus 300. I'm going to increase the velocity here. We'll do 3. And we'll do collision. Save that. But yeah, you have to imagine like the individual, mate, that's too big. Individual sprite, like ball things are bouncing around. Actually, that's how I imagine it. No. What do I do it on? Velocity is turn it down to like just 1 again. Yeah, so you see that sort of bouncing off the top here. Yeah. So collision still works for them. Now further to this as well, you can also add color to it too. So let's go back to there and go to particle update and search for color. Do color there. And do this for my curve again. Now it's going to fade out the ribbon as it gets older, because it's based on its normalized age. So as the older it gets, the more fade out you get. But that means we can do other cool stuff too. So if I go to the color here, bit fiddly to get hold of this, but you double click on it to get it eventually. Do red, green, blue. And you got yourself a rainbow. Like that. Yeah. Now, the see-throughness nature of this is based on the material. So we'll go through how to create your own materials in a second. But if you want it to be more solid, that is where it's going to be. Okay. That's the ribbon renderer. Now, where this comes in really handy is, let's say I want to add trailing to one of my things over here. So I'm going to get rid of all these things over here. And let's make another emitter. And let's pick one of the default ones, save me some time. I'm going to do a directional burst, okay? Maybe not that. Let's do a fountain. Fountain. There you go. There we are. Okay, so we've got this fountain going off over here. So let's make each one of these particles have their own tail on them. Okay. So let's go add emitter. And we'll choose empty. And we're going to take it to be a ribbon. Turn off this bright renderer. And let's just do that. And that to get our ribbon back. Now, the ribbon at the moment is not... We don't want it tying every one of these particles together. But that's not what we want. We want this ribbon to imagine like spawning its own particle tail off individual ones we have on here. So what I'm going to do is going to go over to my fountain. Go to the particle update. And do generate location event. And what basically it's going to do, each particle is going to send out their individual locations. Don't forget, we need to tick on persistent IDs. Turn it on. Okay, so each one of these is sending out their location data. And over here, my ribbon, I'm going to receive it. So I'm going to go up to stage, choose event handler, and I'm going to choose this source to be my location event. So it's detecting that from here. So go over to here, go to the event handler properties down here, change this from every to spawned particles. Max events per frame, mentioned it before. These are how many spawns are going to happen. Let's do 50. And the spawn number we'll do as 10. Okay, so spawn 10 particles, or you probably do 1 particle as they fall through the air. So once we do that, we're going to also receive a location event. So click on the little plus icon in that event handler, type in location, and you'll see in there a receive location event. And now you can see it now raining these particles. Yeah. And so now these are going to last a long time, so I'm going to make them shorter. So I'm going to go to initialize particle, change it from 5 seconds down to maybe 1 second. Maybe even shorter than that. Let's do 0.1. So they've got little tails on them. So if you want to do raindrops, that's one way of doing raindrops. Go over to this one, turn off the sprite renderer. Yeah. So, yeah, pretty good. Okay. You can really mess about with this thing and make really interesting different designs. And then it can explode on impact and combine it with our death and collision events to make them spark and do other things like that. So and so forth. Oh, too late. I just answered your question. I've just seen it come up. But yes, you just turn off the sprite renderer. Now, alongside this, in the render options here, you also do have a light renderer. So if you want these to emit light, you can do. You just go over to here and you just choose what color you want them to add over here. So if I want them to emit white light, I put in a equal value in each one, and the higher that value is, the brighter it'll be. I put in 10, 10, 10. Save that. And each particle here will emit a light. Might have to put it a bit higher. I can't remember what number it needs to be to order it to actually make a difference. I should put it over here in that shadow there. Check that out. You can see, I can see it a little bit, but let's make it brighter. So let's change it to 100. Okay, so now you can see they're now reflecting light off the scene. Okay. What's the difference between light and glow? So glow is sort of a almost like a screen space change, whereas light is being bounced around in the actual scene itself. So the glow is also going to affect the actual particle itself. So the particle is going to glow as well. Here, the particles don't have to glow. They're just emitting light. So, for example, I could make them glow blue but shoot off white light. I go into our thing here, go to color, and change that to 10 in that. We'll make them so they're going to glow green, okay, but they'll emit a white light. You'll see some green as well, but you'll see the white coming off them as well. Yeah. You can do some pretty neat effects by combining things together. Yeah. Let's go through a couple other cool things you can do now. So particle update. There's one called Vortex. It's always fun to do. Vortex velocity or Vortex force. Let's go velocity. Oh, a bit too much. I'm going to turn off the other velocity. Hang on. Add velocity. Turn it off. And I need to Vortex axis 1. Velocity amount here 200. Vortex origin. Yep. So if I go and change the particle spawn here to a shape location, make this larger, let's say to 200. And I need to boost this up a little bit. Vortex velocity, let's change that to 600. You see him spinning a little bit. That's vortex velocity doing that. Do 6,000. So a little bit clearer. Let's do 10,000. Yeah. And because we've got the ribbons on there, I'm just going to increase the size of the ribbon time to 0.25 instead. Let's increase the size of the ribbon as well. Ribbon width to direct set. Yeah. So really cool little things you can mess about with to get different effects. You can even add noise to it as well. So if I turn on curl noise force, and I have to turn off vortex velocity for this, and put normal velocity on. It's going to be hard to see, but basically randomizes them as they're going, as they're moving. It's going to just randomly make them move. So you can see some changes happening on. They look a bit more weird. Change the shape location back down to 8 as it was. And let's go into curl. And I can't remember what the values do. Hang on. Yeah, so you just change the strength of this to 1,000. Yeah, it's in like the wibbly wobbly. Yeah. Okay, so you can make it do random movements through the sky if you want through the noise tool. Okay, so we're going to do one last thing, and that is look at how we can tie materials to this and add inputs to it. So let's go ahead and create a material for this. Delete this and create a material. I'm going to show you how to do some sort of bubble type effect. New material and particle. Okay, and going to our particle material, and in here you're just going to design your material. So we're going to just do a noise value. So search for noise, and this will just generate a noise. So if I put this in the base color here, you'll see this come up. And you'll see this little noise. Now it's obviously I don't want it this crazy. I want it to be a little bit more less like mad. So I'm going to go to scale here, change from 1 to maybe 0.01 maybe. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, so something like this. And you've got a few other things you mess about with the noise too. So let's maybe mess about the different levels. Output min max -1 1. Let's change that from -1. Let's go 0. Bring it more tight in, like that probably. Scale of it 1 4 3 2. We'll stick with 2 here. Okay. And let's go ahead and mess about with other things in here. We can do some stepping in here too. But actually, I'm going to change this output here to -0.5 again. No, look, -0.5. There we go. There we go. And I'm going to take the noise here and do step. Now, what step does is it's going to basically cut off part of the image. So if I put that into base color like this, you can see what I mean. It sort of says like if it's above this certain value, or not this not in this range with a certain value, make it 1 or black. Okay, so I change that to like 0.1. Yeah, and if I scale that value up, it would like basically look like it's fading in and fading out. Okay, like disintegrating, dissolving. So we can mess about with this value here to get different type of cool effects going on. So 1. Pretty tight. Now the reason why we're seeing these little gaps here is because the noise here is going between -0.5. If I change it down to 0, no, right, 0. I have to change the level scale up. Hang on. Whoop. No, why is it going to there? It should be 1. Why are you doing that? 5, 10. Step. Let's change that to 2. Yeah, you don't want it this too high, so I'm going to change level scale back down to 2 here. Yeah, there we go. Right, so step is 2. Okay, so that will basically cut it off essentially. Okay, so we can mess about with this, and we'll also mess about with the color of it and things like that. But let's also make this the sort of opacity of it. So I need to make this here translucent, and I'll make this the opacity. So as the step value changes from 2 down to like 0.5, you'll get holes appear. Okay, so you can make it dissolve and appear and things like that. Yeah, do some interesting things with this. Actually gonna make that emissive as well. Okay. Okay, so at the moment, nothing related to particles. So far, it's all just what we're doing here currently is for our material. Okay, so let's talk about how we actually tie this in with our particle system. So what we can do is we can search for something called particle color, and you see the rest of them here actually. So particle color here is what color we set the particle, and it includes its alpha too. So if I want to change the color based on the particle here, I multiply this by the value I want to multiply it by. Okay, so now that's going to match whatever color I set inside the particle system. Same goes for alpha. So I'm going to put the alpha on here too. So I'm going to do multiply the alpha by that as well. Well, that's all well useful. Let's make things a bit more interesting. So let's say we have our step here, 0.5. Let's animate this on the particle system. So for that, I'm going to do dynamic parameter. And on here, you can set 1 of 4 parameters. The first one, we're going to call it step. And we're going to plug that into our X value there. Okay. So the step value will change based upon what input I put in here into the particle system, which we will see in a second. So you'll see this animated over in a second. But that's an easy way to put in any kind of input you want in there. Obviously, you're limited to 4, but you can do whatever you like in there. There are other particle inputs too. If you just search for the word particle, you will find them. So you can do the particle speed, their size, their position in world space, and use that to determine their color, texture, normal map, whatever you want to do. You can customize the effect there too. Okay, so do play about with these. There are loads here to mess about with. But for now, I'm going to leave it like this, keep it simple. I'm going to hit apply and save this. And I'll answer a load of questions in a minute as well. I think I'll do like a little Q&A on particle system in a second. Let's go into our visual effects over here. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my current work here. And this time I'm going to use a mesh. Now, if I go into my emitter and choose an empty one, alongside sprite renderer, there's also mesh emitter. So if you wanted to spawn things like 3D models, you can do that too. So I'm going to turn off sprite here. I'm going to do mesh. I'm going to choose whatever mesh I like. I'm going to choose a sphere for this one. So shape sphere, but it literally could be anything you want. Any static mesh you like could be fair game. Okay. I'm going to go to emitter update. And I'm going to do spawn burst and spawn 1. There you go. I've got a 3D model on my ball there. Now I wanted to give it that material I made. So I'm going to go to the mesh renderer. And over here on the right hand side, you'll see the option to enable material override. Tick this and you can see override materials. I can click on that and now I can add in my own material. And particle. Okay, there it is. So let's say I want to animate this particle over lifetime. It's showing this step disappearing and dissolving. So at the moment, we are doing spawn burst. Actually, let's change that down to spawn count to 0. Let's do 0.1. Okay. Oh, point. 1. Hang on. Discharge particle 5 seconds. That should be fine. Okay, that's fine. So I'll get confused. Right. So particle update. When you go in here and search for that dynamic material in parameters, this is going to link to that dynamic parameters node inside of our material, and you'll see step here has already appeared and it starts at 0. Obviously 0 is invisible, but if I were to click on this, hey, I've got dynamic inputs here I could put in. So what do we know we can use? Well, we can use a float from a curve, thing that we've been using before, and we can now make things fade away like that. Yeah, pretty cool. So over here we can control the value of our curve, and you see it starts at 1, but we don't want it to start at 1, we want it to start at 2. So it starts full and then we'll disintegrate out and fade out. Now as it is fading out, let's change its the visual color of it as well. And particle update, I'm going to do color. And I'm going to change this to color from curve. And not only is it going to do that a bit of fade out as well, I'm going to get rid of the alpha though. I don't want to use that. So let's just change that to... Alright, it's such a pain to click on this thing. There you go. There you go. So alpha away, it's not going to go away. But the color, we can go over here and we'll say we're going to start off at like a red. And we'll fade it to green. Okay. Some interesting things you can do here. Let's show something a bit more interesting. I'm going to change this color here to blue. And blue. Oh, click on the damn thing. Honestly, it's a pain to click on. It's so fussy about where you click. Different type of blue there. Okay, so we've got different effects going on here. Now let's tie this to change the material up a little bit. I'm going to go back to my material. And I'm going to change my noise a little bit. I'm going to add in a gradient to this thing. So if I take this and just mask out the G value, which is the vertical component mask, turn off the R, and this will give you a gradient like this. I'm going to multiply this by the noise. I'll get into step there. Yep. And let's say we want to cut off half of our shape as well, make it more like a bubble effect. So we're going to go into our step value here. And that's going to go into here. I'll leave it at 0.5. And we should see it half off like this. I'm going to put that into multiplying with my current opacity. And basically, I'm going to cut off the bottom half of my circle. Like this. Hit apply. Go to my particle again. There you go. Use some interesting things there. Okay. I want to flip it around. Hang on, let's go back to our particle. I thought it might be the wrong way around. So I'm going to flip this. Oh, hello. And the flipper, so we just do 1 minus. It'll flip it around. I'm going there. There you go. Now it disintegrates from the top of the bubble down. Yep. And so this is all based on its speed of its lifespan. So if I were to go to make it faster, I'd go to lifetime from 5 seconds to maybe 1 second. It goes a lot quicker. There, I'll change that to 0.5 instead. But the long gap in between is because the system's got a 5-second loop. You can change that on the system settings. It might be actually, yeah, down here, loop duration. Change that to 1. It'll be a lot quicker to test. Okay. Do some pretty cool things. Now, alongside that, we will make this thing two-sided. So let's take this material and take it two-sided so I can see the inside of it as it disintegrates. Apply that. And now I see the inside of the bubble as it is. Let me make it slow again. 5. There we go. Oh, I've got to change the loop duration again. There we go. Okay, so I can see the inside of my bubble now. Okay. Now, I'm going to make the inside of my bubble a little bit darker than, or a little different color than my, the outside of my bubble. So in here, we can get the, oh, what is it called? I think it's two-sided sign. We're going to alert the two-sided sign. Linear interpolate. And that's going to be our alpha. And so basically, if it is the outside, it'd be A. If it's the inside, it'd be B. So I want this emissive color to be the A there. I want it to be darker. So I'm going to multiply this by grey value. Obviously not black because that'd be crazy. It'd be just not invisible. And we'll put that in there. And then put that in there. We should see a darker color on the inside. Or it might be the outside. Oh, I don't know where. Yep, done the wrong way around. Fine, we'll just flip that. There we are. We'll see. Hang on. What's happened there? Color, multiplied that by this. That becomes the and then that becomes that. Why is it showing like? Wait, is it? Hang on. Is it actually? Why are you doing that? Maybe it's not two-sided sign I'm thinking of then. What's that one I'm thinking of? It's certainly it was two-sided sign. Can't recall. I'm 100% certain it was that. Why is it coming out weird like this? Pa, 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 pa. Yeah, that's two-sided sign doing that, but why is it going black and white? White should be this, and this multiplied by this should be that. But why are we getting this black value? I should be getting anything really. Oh. Wait, what? No, why is it black? Ah, confused. I'll plug that in there. Yeah. Let's try clamping values, maybe. That thing. No, why am I getting black? I'm confused. Why am I getting black? Goes in there. Yeah. Yeah. For some reason it's like rendering through itself. I don't know how it's doing that. But you can see the effect I was talking about, like darker on the inside than it is on the outside. I don't get why half of it decides it wants to be see-through. Do not know. Something to think about. I'll have a look into that one. I'm not too sure why it's doing that. But anyway, let's recap basically what we just covered. You can access particle information in your materials and mess about with them there. We're going to tie this also to dynamic inputs such as the dynamic parameter, also the sine waves, random ranges, various different things we could do inside of our individual module settings. Do mess about with them. The only way you can really learn and get practice in Niagara is by experimenting with them. And do take a moment to look at some visual effects in games and kind of break them apart into individual emitters. You'll notice that you'll have different emitters for various things layered on top of each other to create different things going on here. So we want to mess about with things like timings and things like that to make things happen at different times. You can all handle that inside of your emitter and go to the emitter's delay or loop time. Hang on, where is it? So yeah, you can do the spawn time here. So you can choose how long they last for and what they're going to do. You also choose their life cycle. So at the moment, this life cycle is based upon the system. I can do it on self. I can customize the loop duration for this on its own if I wanted to. So it's not related to the system and it's completely independent from it. I can totally do that as well. There are tons and tons of settings available to us inside the Niagara system. And the only real way to really learn what each thing does is by experimenting with it. Now, we've just scraped the surface of Niagara system. There's tons of stuff in here and tons of things that you can possibly experiment with to get different effects. Please spend some time and experimenting with them. You'll be surprised about what you can actually achieve. Now, hopefully, from after this session, you've taken away a few hints and tips of how you can start beginning to learn and start developing your own skills in this. As I said, it's an art form. It's not something you're just going to see an immediate answer to how to achieve. Learn what each thing does. Understand what they do and see how you can use them. Experiment, see what values do what and what kind of cool crazy effects you can do as well. Now before we do wrap up, we're going to spend our last 10 minutes answering any questions you want about Niagara. So do put your questions in the chat and we'll answer whatever we find in chat there. Neo Masaki, is it possibly due to the opacity with what's inside being a darker shade it would show through? Yeah, it could be. It could well be. If I change that to a masked and put that in there, maybe that might be better. Take a look at that. Let's change this from self back to system. There you go. That's better. Yeah, so change it from masked worked. I think, yeah, Masaki, thank you. So now it dissolves from the top down and pops. We can obviously change the speed of that so it's not so slow. 0.5. Yeah. And obviously this is a bubble, so you can make it burst like normal as well. So if I wanted to do lifetime of, say, let's do 1.2. I'm going to go to my dynamic material parameter over here, and I'm going to change the curve so it doesn't start moving the curve until later on. So I'm going to move that along here, so it just stays solid for a little bit. Now the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to make it so on particle update it'll scale and look like it pops. So I'm going to go scale mesh size and do curve. Scale vector by curve. There we go. And in here, we'll do, select it. I might have to add points in. No, you're not going to be doing it. Okay, fine. We'll change that to 0. Ooh, and 0. And this one will be 0.1, no, 0.6 and 1. Right, where is it? Scale mesh size. Yep. We should be seeing it spawning. Initial value, maybe 10, 10, 10. No, why is this not working? Scale mesh size. Yeah, is it? Hang on. Curve. We'll do vector from curve. Screw it. Let's do that. Oh, turn it on. That would help. We'll change this from 0 here. And change that to 6 and 1 there. Why is this thing not scaling? Appears as soon as I turn it on. What have I missed? Mesh size, mesh scale mode, uniform. There you go. That'd be on uniform. It must be relying on the initial uniform size of the mesh. So yeah, so I'm gonna pop like that. Add points with enter key, by the way, on this one. Yeah, there's some fun things there. If we combine it with more bubbles coming off, maybe splashes and water droplets or whatever, you can do some fun things there. So if you want to make like poisonous lake or bubbling lake, you can easily just drag these things in. You mentioned that would be in lava. You can make like the bubbling lava type thing. You can make them delay their start as well, so they're not in sync like that too. If I go into here, go to emitter update. Or no, properties. No, what one is it on? Oh, have I got two here? Yeah. Estate. Life cycle mode. System. Probably go to system over here. Loop delay. There we go. So turn on that. And this will be a random range float. And it'll go between 0 and 2. And it'll randomize when it should start. So it shouldn't be in sync. How do you use various emitters to work with one another over time? Like say a torch gets activated by the player, burns out for a bit before dying out after a few seconds with just a ribbon of smoke. So you could probably make it... it depends on how you want to time it. Do you want to time it to be based upon the actor or upon the visual effects? I personally just keep the timer on the actual torch itself and then make it just play a different visual effect for the smoke after the fact. Rather than trying to time it all on the visual effect there. Now, you can totally do a dynamic parameter as well that link to your blueprint. That's one thing I didn't go through and show you today, is that you can actually access a lot of parameters inside of your system here, inside of your blueprint. So you go over here, got user parameters. I can click on this and I can add a like ball, float, integer, vector, whatever I want. I can add this here and I can access this and change this inside of a blueprint. So if I was doing like a simple flame, I wanted it to burn out, I could just turn it like a ball to turn on or a vector to turn on or something like that to mess about and change the values that you're seeing being played. So you can definitely mess about with stuff like that if you wanted to. Lottie, if you could do this with any shape, could you do this with a player character so they dissolve when they die? Yes, you could. Yep. You can add skeletal mesh components to this thing too as well, so you can show skeletal mesh to it. So if I go to I forgot where it is now. Component renderer, I think it is. Go to component renderer, component type, skeletal mesh component, and you've got things down here you can choose. Skeletal mesh. Search for mesh would be easier probably. There you go, mesh. I can choose down here. I can make it spawn skeletal mesh and do it with that. Want you to. And you can do a material override on that probably as well. Material. Yeah. Override materials. There you go. And particle. Try the other one. Wait for the shaders to compile. So they can be animated too. The skeletal meshes, yes, they can have animations on them as well. It's not finished yet. You can particles can support like flipbook animations as well. So if you want to do a flipbook animation, you can do. Why is that not showing now? Particle. So I know it has two elements, so maybe I have to add two elements to it. I remember this component one being relatively new and or broken. Well, not broken, but just a bit buggy. experimental type thing. Visible? That's head of visible, maybe. I don't know. That's something to mess about with, but yeah, you can do, yeah. How do you make a particle of darker color? I can only manage to make sort of pastel colors work. It depends on what kind of thing you're using. Look back at the material you're using. The one that default in the sprite renderer, this one here, if I turn it on, is pretty basic, but it's only going to emissive color, so therefore it's going to glow that color. It's not going to be like a standard color, but it can be literally whatever you want. So if I wanted to maybe make this rather than additive, make this opaque and put that, well, not opaque, let's change that to translucent, not translucent, masked. No, why can't I do base color? Hang on, oh, it's unlit, that's why. Default lit, there you go. And put that in base color there instead, and change that to translucent now. You're gonna get a much more like normal pastel-y like color to mess about with. So yeah, look at the material yourself. It's probably what you're seeing here. Pastel colors only really work. Do change the material out. Yeah. How is sound involved in Niagara? Yes, so you can also generate sound effects as well. They are on particle update. Yeah, you can play audio. You play this. Beware, this is a bad thing to do if you want to play on particle update. It's like a tick event, so it will noise basically. So if you want to play a noise when it spawns in, just doing particle spawn. If you want it to happen when it gets destroyed, oh, pardon me, you can make it in a different emitter that plays that happen there, but you can make a different sound there. So when it spawns in, I'm going to put a button there. Oh, it made me jump. There you go. But it's doing it now. Yeah, it will spawn those in. Okay, but yeah, I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that? You should be able to. But to make it even crazier, if I go and put this on a fountain, you'll see what I mean. So, particle spawn, audio, play audio. Yeah, it gets a bit loud. Be careful with that. Sound on collision with floor. Yep. Yeah, so on the event handler, when it collides with floor, so for example, on this fountain, if I want to do it like that, I go to collision, first of all. And go to stage event handler, and I want to do it on collision here, so I have to do generate collision event. I should be able to do it all in one thing here, so I need persistent IDs. Hold on. Yeah, so my event handler down here, just choose collision event. Spawn particles, max events. I'll do one, that way I don't get loads of audio playing all the bloody time. Spawn number 1, and event handler, I'll click on this and do audio, and do camera shutter. Yes. Yes. Oh, I've got 2 of them playing. Yeah, so there's a lot bouncing around. Let's turn that down a bit. So spawn rate down to like 3. Okay. It gets a bit nutty. But more importantly, you can do it on like when they're destroyed, maybe. So when they hit the ground, they're destroyed, and make the player sound when they're destroyed. You totally could, yes. For a projectile, would it be better to optimize the spawn of particle flying towards the target with collision effects, or an actor and append the collision effect there? Definitely do an actor first, because you're going to get a lot more information available to you to do some interesting things with it. So definitely do it on the actor, and attach the particle effect to the actor as it flies through the air. Sounds awful. Yes, it did. Yeah, audio you have to be very careful of, because it can sound awful very quickly, especially if you've got lots of them going on. But I would recommend maybe for the audio you make a separate emitter for the audio, so it spawns it at a certain amount of time. That might be the way to go. But that was limited just to 1 per frame. So if you're running 60 frames per second, you're going to get at least 6 of those being played. So yeah, it can get pretty nutty. But anyway, that brings us to the end of our live class here covering Niagara. Now, we've only, as I said, skimmed the surface of Niagara. There's lots to it. So definitely recommend going into it yourself, playing around with what you can make, and have some fun with it. Okay, it is an art form, so don't be surprised if you find yourself going back, tweaking numbers, changing things out, experimenting with different modules you have. Okay, so definitely check that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and call that an evening. Benillo, did I see a message? Would you add randomly generated loot in your inventory system? No, but I've got a video about that, so you can check that out and combine that with that if you wanted to. By the way, thank you everyone. If you want to watch the recap of this, Patreon members will have access for it for 2 weeks. They can mess about and over on Patreon and sign up there and get access to all my videos early, including this Patreon. I'll talk it a bit late. Get access to the Patreon exclusive items, as well as the early access to all videos, as well as the archive of this footage for 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks' time, it'll be made available to everyone to watch live on YouTube. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone who supported me over on Patreon, YouTube members. It is amazing for your support. Thank you again so much. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.